Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. It's me, Alex, your host, and I've got to tell you something. I'm nervous as hell. Here's the reason. A lot of you may know that I, at one time, had a brief career in radio that goes along with the face I have for radio. And for about a year and a half, I was the host of a weekly talk show on WKY-AM in Oklahoma City, and the ratings were about as low as the basement could get for that kind of thing. But still, I do know a little bit about how to put things together, I think. And then I get somebody like my friend Mary McKenna, who's going to appear on the show, who can basically, talk me under the table and out the door and do it all while she's, reading something and filing her nails.
You under the table too.
She can drink me under the table too. And here she is. And I was waiting with my really bad intro for her to step in and say me, and she just did. Dear, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So thanks so much for appearing. And I'm excited to talk to you because not only do you have a voice that, and don't take this the wrong way, but is fairly legendary in the Kansas City area market, but you're also a delight and a friend, and I'm still a little nervous that you're on.
Oh, why? Because you just dabbled in radio?
I just dabbled. I was a dabbler. But I freely admit I was a dabbler. Yeah. And this whole podcast thing where now everybody and their dog's got a podcast, it's kind of funny because I started doing this stuff in podcasting in like 2006, back when it first started, and you had to get your Dixie cup tied together with some string and baling wire and try to make it work. It was horrible. And, you get pitying looks from people who are actually on the radio. And now it seems like everybody's got one. And it's easy to get eclipsed by people.
I'm sorry. Everyone's got one. And a lot of them are better than terrestrial. I was going to say transitional, but that wasn't it. Terrestrial radio, which I think is, and it's not a, bitter party of one, your table's ready. I just think it's kind of sad. Everybody is on a meter. They call them people meters.
Right.
And basically, if it's not forward moving, if you haven't hit the punchline, if there's no music moving, someone's going to change the station. And so everybody's in fear of that. And so they don't take the time to develop some type of routine or build up to the comedic, climax. They just introduce the next song and just keep peddling the music. And I think it's just kind of sad.
I think it is too, but podcast has developed a way for people, and it's all very niche, of course, except for the really big ones, But I mean, there's podcasts I listen to that are about just for fun, like about the paranormal. There's podcasts I listen to that are about short stories, and there's podcasts about sex. There's podcasts about fitness. It seems like now there's a menu, and if you can't find a podcast about something that interests you, you're not trying very hard.
Is there anyone, I haven't really looked into it too much, podcasts on just napping and sleeping, because that's my favorite thing to do.
Well, there are some podcasts that are so good, they'll help you nap and sleep. So
I was thinking it was called meditation apps, Mary.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So, let's take a step back, though, for the folks who don't know. You have worked in and around radio your entire career, basically. I know you did a brief turn in PR with the government in Jackson County, Missouri, but basically,
my God, that was terrible.
What? That's so funny.
I was green. I was greener than gourds. I was just so, as they say, how many other cliches can I come with? Wet behind the ears type of thing. I let newspaper reporters freak me out. I had deer in the headlight disease. They'd come to me and ask me a question, and instead of saying something intelligent like, well, let me get back to the county executive, and I'll be able to give you more of a detailed report on that a little bit later. I had no idea what they were talking about because the county executive hadn't shared any of the information with me. And so I was like, I don't know. What are you talking about? I was just, I was abysmal. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. We want to make sure you get that out of your system. I don't think we'll be hearing. I don't think we'll be hearing much about how abysmal you were when we talk about getting in the radio. So let me ask you that, though. You did some radio in college, right? And was that your first taste of radio?
Yes, I started at KCMW, which was the college campus radio. But unlike a campus radio, it was licensed. It was you could listen to it in Kansas City, Missouri. Oh my gosh, it went beyond the campus, and I learned to appreciate jazz because it was a jazz station at night, and I did a little bit of everything. I was the station's student liaison, which means I thought my didn't stink. I didn't get paid for it, but I got to weigh in with some of the powers that be on what we should do, and that made me think I was something, something. Yeah, I was something,
perhaps,
all right.
Perhaps, just maybe, and don't throw anything at me, but maybe you were something. How about that?
That's a whole other show we can debate.
Oh my gosh.
What was she?
Oh my goodness. So you did that, and you graduated there, and I know you did start out. So you started out as a reporter, correct, on the radio?
Well, I started there as kind of a music jock, and I also did the 3:55 news headlines.
Right.
And I would break out into the huge red hives on my neck.
Oh, bless your heart.
My chest every afternoon because it just scared me to death. I left there when actually, while I was still in college, I did local news. I was a news director for a little station called KOKO or Coco in Warrensburg, Missouri. And then when I graduated, I took my senior internship at KMBZ, 98.1 FM now. It was 980 AM at the time. And I just stayed there for, about 6 years.
So when did you, and your primary...
It's not how talent... I'm sorry, I keep talking over you.
Well, that's your job. Keep talking. I'll be quiet the more you talk. No, I was going to ask did you kind of decide, okay, I like being a jock more, or I like doing the news, or did it matter to you? It's just, hey, hand me a script, put me in front of a microphone?
No, when I first started, all I did was news, and that's all I knew, really. When I left there to go to KFKF, where I spent the next 25 years, which makes me older than dirt, I didn't know how to do that either. And I have to tell you, I was blessed at the time to meet an individual who just wanted to let me shine. And he's passed now. Dan Roberts was his name. He passed away a few years ago for pancreatic cancer. But I came in and I said, I don't know really what I'm doing. He said, well, let's just talk. Let's just have a conversation. And we chit-chatted, and the powers that be there said, well, I don't know, what do you think? And Dan said, I think she's great, and we have good chemistry together, and so I got a job there.
I love it. That's fantastic. We all need a mentor like that. We're not all blessed to have a mentor like that. You and I've talked before. We go back a few years, not as long as you've been in radio, of course, but but we do go back a few years. And I can recall talking to you over lunch a few times about, and I believe this is what you said. It was more or less, especially when you were doing your long stint there. It wasn't like work. Every day was fun, or at least for a long period of time it was. Is that a fair statement about how it was?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I had to go out and get a real stupid job, and that's, I was like, oh my God, I have to work. This sucks. But part of it was how young I was at the time, and we were all kind of kids, and we loved going to the concerts, and it was all new to me, and we were backstage, and it was just hilarious, and everybody was a clown. And then as you got older, it became more of a job, and you didn't go to all the concerts because you'd seen some of the same people 15 times. You didn't really care. It was like, I have to go MC a concert, as opposed to when I first started is, I get to go MC a concert.
Right.
I was excited about it, Eventually the excitement, it's kind of like a marriage. Eventually the excitement goes away.
Well, there's a good kind of a grind, and there's not so good kind of a grind.
Oh, my goodness.
We're not even drinking. Hey, so...
No.
Let me ask you this, though. So, but What was the part though that you loved the most? Was it when you had a co-host, an on-air person that you clicked with, and that there was? I mean, because if you listen to the air checks that we're playing a few here on the show, but if you listen to the air checks, just about how quick and sharp and witty, and I know that from knowing you offline, and that's one reason you and I think click a little bit, is I'm not as sharp as you are.
She could be the next American Idol, and she's from Kansas City. Rachel Wicker joins us this morning. Rachel, good morning. How are you?
Oh, I did do some embarrassing stuff, though, like talk about bodily function.
Wait a minute.
It can be kind of embarrassing.
On camera? What possessed you, Rachel?
Well, they asked me, like, what I was going to do to celebrate after I got my golden ticket, and I was just, the first thing that popped in my head was, I gotta poop.
Since you revealed something about yourself.
Oh,
Wait a minute.
That feeling comes over her whenever there's a sale.
I told you that in confidence, Dale Carter.
Oh, my gosh.
I have a shopper's colon.
Was that what it was for you the most, or was it something else about it that you loved, besides the fact that it wasn't a real job, as you said earlier? Haha.
It was so much on air as it was off air. It was a group of people in both places where I worked. I was at KMBZ as a news reporter, and then I was a partner with, here's a name everyone will know, with Rush Limbaugh for about 3 years.
Oh, my God.
When he was still in Kansas City at KMBZ.
Years later, when you're off the radio and doing internet radio, you and I were on a show together, and I think you said to me at one point, yeah, the first thing I noticed about you is you're pretty full of yourself.
I can't believe you shared that.
Hey, it's all, if you listen to this podcast, there's very few secrets from me and my listeners.
But it was true. The gentleman who actually was the host of the show, and you were kind of the co-host.
Yeah.
I was supposed to have been the off-air producer. That was almost slip. I was supposed to have been the off-air producer, but I believe y'all thought I was just so glib and so fun that you put me on the air. And I remember one time, and it was just too funny because you turned beet red. You remember this? I don't remember what it was, but we were getting ready to record.
Yeah.
And you were wanting to know if I was ready. And I said, I'm ready, Alex. And you just fell apart. If I'd known it was that easy, I would have done that a long time before.
It was, the timing was perfect, and I wasn't really ready for you. And I didn't know you, and I was very intimidated by you anyway. And so when you did that, I just lost it. Yeah, I remember. And the client, our co-host, it was funny because we were both working for this gentleman, basically. But yeah, he thought it was hysterical. He loved that. We had several moments with him that were actually a blast. He was a pretty fun guy. But yeah, you and I had a good time. And I'll never forget the first time you said, "Hey, let's go get lunch or something," because I really thought you couldn't stand me. And apparently you got over it. So.
Yeah, I worked through my feelings
somehow. but hey, enough about me. This isn't about me. But I'm really, and I should kind of just fast forward. So after I fast forward through this brilliant career in radio, but you're still in radio. You did take a detour, like where we worked together. You're working in internet radio for a few years, but now you may have potentially the largest listener base that you've ever had. Is that fair to say? Where you are now?
Yeah.
Tell us where you are now. What are you doing?
$1.25 million, maybe.
Wow.
That's what we assume on a weekly basis. Well, I'm on SiriusXM, and I'm on channel 146. And everybody's going, gee, I've never listened to that channel. Well, there's probably very good reason for it. Unless you're a truck driver or in the transportation industry, it's very doubtful that you would listen to what's called the Road Dog. The Road Dog is the name of the channel. And all day long, 7 days a week, it's all about trucking. Our show is a news and information show that airs daily, and we talk about what's going on in Washington. I'm associated with the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, of which there's 162,000 members now. And we are basically a mouthpiece for the organization and also to cover straight news of what's going on in the transportation industry. We have 4 lobbyists in Washington, D.C., who we talk to every day and interview every day about what's going on. And I will tell you that this is the closest I've ever had to be to politics, and it makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, well, yeah, that could be a whole other episode where both of us talk about our political interactions. It's
oh my goodness.
I don't miss being a lobbyist. I don't miss being a candidate. I really don't. I understand. It's the whole sausage being made thing. You're too close now. Now you know how the sausage is being made.
Well, and so many times I know that we can't actually do something about one particular senator or representative because we might need them later on down the road.
Right.
We can't express our opinions. And I'm not talking about on social media, but we can't go to someone else and say, so-and-so did us wrong by not doing this, because you don't know when you're going to need them next week or next month or the next Congress or whatever. So you just have to play that really nice middleman kind of person. Excuse me, and you know how good I am at that.
Oh yeah, that's your skill right there, being. But you're walking on eggshells constantly, and I'm not even in this line of work, but I don't know if the average American understands how important independent truckers and truckers are in general. Without trucking, this country doesn't move at all.
Do you like to eat? Do you like to sleep on sheets? Do you like toilet paper in your house? I mean, it's like it's everything we use. Everything we use. Just even if you went to a concert, how many trucks are required to get, your favorite band to the amphitheater and watch a show? It's
so
it's
true.
amazing. There are 3 million truck drivers on the roads every day. And before anybody goes, they're awful and they cause a lot of wrecks. No, they don't. 70% of, and you'll have to look it up because you could say, she's just biased. And I am. But 70% of most large truck accidents are caused by what we call the four-wheelers, the passenger cars, the motorist who cut in front of a truck and they don't have time to stop, or they're in their blind spot with their mirrors, or they pass them on the right side of the truck, which is very much a blind spot for truckers. Yeah. And somehow they get the bad rap in mainstream media, and it's not really their fault most of the time.
It stuns me when I'm out on the road because I see people who, they don't understand that an 18-wheeler does not have the stopping power. They can't just stop on a dime like, your four-wheel car. Pretty much you hit the brakes and you're stopped in a few feet, basically. A truck with, especially if it's a truck hauling a full load, right? I mean, it takes forever.
80,000 pounds, generally.
Good gravy. I mean, you're going to be smushed. And I see it all the time. And then these people have the nerve to flip the bird to the trucker. And I'm just like, oh, geez,
I know a lot of truckers who have I know a lot of truckers, members of our association, who have actually ditched the truck, gone and pulled over and the truck went over on its side rather than run into, let's say there was a jam up ahead of them and somebody pulled up in front of them, rather than run into them, which then would run into everybody else and there would be fatalities. Right. They have purposely taken the truck off the road and sometimes done injury to themselves. And I'm not saying all truckers are like that, but the bulk of them are. They're mostly pretty good guys.
Yeah.
And gals.
And gals, right. You ever doing a ride-along?
I've not yet. I was going to do one with our tour truck driver, who John goes from truck show to truck stop all year long, and is out there. He's the representative. He's also our eyes and our ears. We've got truck drivers who come in and talk to him and say, I don't like this, and blah, 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 and they complain about this, that, or the other. So we find out what's going on with the truckers out on the road. It's like they want to know why this is this, and have you done anything about that, and could you have look, for instance, with the tax change that came about where the 1%ers got this huge, wonderful tax cut, right? You remember that? You know that, right?
Rings a bell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Company drivers, now we represent a lot of owner-operators, but company drivers lost their per diems, which for some company drivers, if they drive most of the year, is like a $16,000 pay cut. They can't write it off.
Yikes. So
we're fighting to get the per diems back for them. But as long as the Republicans are in control of the Senate, that's probably not going to happen.
So they're in opposition to that. Is it simply because it was their tax bill and they don't want to mess with any of it? Is that it, or is it? And we don't have to get too deep here.
We don't have to get too deep, but the point of the fact is it'll have to come from somewhere, and that means probably giving back a little bit or taking more away from the 1%ers. That's not going to happen.
We kind of tacked through your career in a way here. So we started college radio. And it wasn't just your limited to campus college radio. It wasn't just like, hey, I've got a tree fort and we have a radio station. It was a real deal. You could hear it all over the place. And then you got into the actual legit terrestrial radio scene for 25 plus years.
30. I did 6 years at KMBZ, left to go to KFKF, and then left there, came back to KMBZ as a co-host of I say women's talk show, but it was not a women's talk show.
No, Radio Dish?
Radio Dish.
Oh, man.
Definitely. It was a morning radio show that just happened to be hosted by two women.
And I was on it once. I enjoyed it very much. It was a good time.
Well, thank you. It was.
It was a blast. Again, I was still like sitting there going, she hates me. Why did she invite me on? But anyway, so but you did that, and then you did online radio, and then now here you are on satellite radio. So you have and now you're on a podcast right now. So you have basically done it all. And let me just ask you, you were, radio, particularly FM radio, had a huge heyday while you were a star here locally, and
yeah.
And what can you give me an idea about what that was like for you? One, as a professional, but two, also as a woman in the business. How did things change between the 80s and the aughts?
Well, I will tell you that all the Me Too's that we hear about, the Me Too stories, if you want Me Too stories, I could just totally bore you with many, 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 many Me Too stories.
Wow.
Here locally and or in Nashville, where I was in country music for the 25 years I was at KFKF. So all of the CMAs, occasionally out in Los Angeles at the Academy of Country Music Awards, and other programs throughout the year in Nashville. And record label reps think they own you, and they certainly buy you all the liquor you want. And that is not necessarily a complimentary combination.
So you were kind of fending off a lot of handsy dudes.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. But the thing of it is, I just assumed, and talking to my other fellow female radio people of the same generation, it just happened. Nobody bitched about it. Nobody complained about it. It's not that we were, I don't know, because if you did, you would be out of a job. We would have all been out of jobs. So it has changed greatly, because now it's, definitely not allowed.
That was my question. So has that legit changed now? Is that culture dead as a doornail, or are there probably, as far as you think, pockets of it still going on? Or do you think, by and large, women are a lot, for want of a better term, safer in the workplace? Or what do you think?
I think they're safer in the workplace, but I do believe that the record label leches are still alive and well. And unfortunately, especially for a woman who has some type of either a program director, their management program director, or a music director, someone who has some kind of say on what gets played on a radio station, or more importantly, how a record rep can help you or hurt you. Let's say they're a record representative for, now Garth Brooks is bigger, he doesn't need a record rep, but let's say for Garth Brooks, and you want Garth Brooks to come to your city to perform a concert. Well, if you were nasty mean to this record rep, then you might not ever see Garth Brooks in your town. That type of thing.
It's a lot of power.
Yeah.
Difference between terrestrial and satellite radio. We were talking earlier about podcasts and how everything's very niche. So satellite radio is very niche. As you said, how many people knew there was a trucker channel, basically, right? What do you think? Is that the future of not just radio, but media in general? Do you believe it's going to continue this direction where basically all media will be there for the taking? You just pick and choose what you want, kind of like cord cutting with TV. I've done that. I can kind of pick the stuff I want to watch.
Definitely a la carte.
Yeah.
It's a la carte radio. I truly believe that, except for maybe music, but even Apple Music has changed that, where like my daughter, who's 16, doesn't listen to terrestrial radio unless she's stuck in my car because I'm too cheap to buy satellite. Isn't that terrible? I'm on satellite radio and I'm too cheap to buy satellite.
What I love is that you're fully admitting it.
Truthfully, to be honest, the marketing department will set me up if I would just give them the numbers on the back of my little satellite radio, which my car has. But it's like, I'll do it tomorrow.
Oh my
I'll do it
goodness.
next
You're missing.
I
I listen, and I've listened to Landline, by the way. I've listened to Sirius. I have SiriusXM. I've had it for years. I got it years ago when my little girl was just an infant. I got it for like a Father's Day gift. I'll admit it was kind of fun and all that, and I've got it in my car and I can listen online. That's where I listen to it a lot. It got a few years in where it was getting more and more expensive, but actually SiriusXM kind of works with you. If you say, I'm thinking I'm going to have to shut this down, they'll work with you a little bit on the price. But I guess my point being, though, I've stuck with it because it's worth it, because I like to hear voices such as yours. I like to hear, I like to be able to go, okay, if I'm in the car and I'm actually in the mood for the shit show in D.C., I can go to CNN or go to one of the special channels and listen to that stuff, That's rare. Mostly I'm stuck in like 80s hell. I listen to a lot of 80s music and new wave music and some country and all that stuff. But I've got about my 5 or 6 stations. But there's one station I really love to, just to put a point here, is I love the Beatles channel. I listen to that one.
I knew that. See, now, but doesn't that cost more? See, again, the cheapness kind of thing.
I don't know if it costs more. It seems to be part of my
you
package.
You have to pay for the Beatles channel in addition to your satellite prescription, the way I always understood
I've
it.
I've never had any issue turning over to it at all. I've never seen anything on my bill that indicates that. So,
well, you must be special.
Well, I am kind of special, and I'm full of myself. So, I know we've got to wrap this up. See, you and I could talk for hours, but I wanted to get to this one last thing really quickly, because one thing listeners to this show know is that we like to talk about creative endeavors, and you're in a very creative profession. So I wanted to ask 3 questions about that before I let you go, because I know you've got to get to the gym, and then you've got to get home to your daughter and your husband and all that stuff. But I wanted to just ask you this. Back when you were on the air, did you, especially when you were the co-host, right, the morning show kind of thing, did you write bits ahead of time?
Oh, God, no.
No?
Very seldom. Now, occasionally you'd have the punch. You'd know what direction you were going, and everybody knew what the out was. So it's kind of like, I like to think about when you're playing sandlot baseball and people are going to see who bats first, and you grab the bat and then the next fist goes and the next one, and somebody puts the hand up on top of the bat. So you don't override the punchline. So if everybody knows what the out is, but sometimes there's always some kind of snarky jerk who wants to try to out punch your punch. They're not well liked by most people.
Well, because they're
punchline, move on.
Right. You're not serving the show very well if you're trying to get the last word, if the last word isn't funny or interesting, right? I mean,
let me tell you something I was told a long time ago, which I have kept near and dear to me ever since, because it's the truth. A man who is a friend of mine, he's down in Dallas now, who does a lot of voice work, but he was my program director for a while, Dean James, and he said, have fun, stop being funny.
Wow, I love that. That's so true, because if you're trying too hard, people can tell, right?
Oh, God, it sounds forced.
Yeah.
Yeah, and rehearsed. Have you noticed now when you go back and watch old television shows sometimes, how rehearsed and they are building to the punchline kind of thing, and it's like everybody has their part. They're not funny. They're trying to be funny as opposed to having fun.
Well, that strikes me as most sitcoms, even today. It's just beat, joke, laughter, beat. Yeah, not all of them, right? Not all of them, but you hear that a lot. And I think I did something on Twitter a few months ago you caught where I was talking about, okay, this is the Disney Channel kids shows. It's beat, dumb remark, hold for laughter, move on. And it's not even funny. But anyway, so one last thing. You also, I know you don't do a ton of this right now, or maybe you do more than I know you do. I know you do it, but it's probably not the major part of your work life at the moment, but you also run a commercial voiceover business where you do voiceovers, I assume, for spots, radio spots, advertisements, TV, that kind of thing. Is
television, whatever, yeah. MaryMcKennaVO.com. Might as well get my plug out there.
Yeah, so the question would be, and this is the question I have to ask because all these writers who listen to this show, so you haven't done a lot of books yet, as far as I know, right?
I've done 2, and they were both, well, they weren't, oh God, they were boring. They were both health books.
Right.
One was about